Good afternoon and thanks for joining us. I'm Judy Simpson. We begin this afternoon with a snapshot. It's a moment in time captured and frozen for all to see. But if you look a little closer and put several snapshots together, you begin to see a bigger picture. Recently, the University of Vermont put together more than 80 snapshot moments that capture that bigger picture. Across the Fence's Keith Silva tells us about a day in the life of UVM.
Recently, University of Vermont Communications sent a team of photographers and writers across campus and across Vermont to try to capture a snapshot of one day at UVM.
A day in the life really gives us a chance to take a look at the whole world that's happening around us that we may not see day in and day out.
The project began at 6 a.m. on October 20th, 2015. These early morning images capture a place that's lively and wide awake despite the hour.
For our audience, which primarily is the high school student who's wondering which school to go to, doing a day in the life really helps us show what is life at the University of Vermont like. What happens in the classroom, but also what happens in the residence halls, what happens on sports teams. So it gives them a chance to see what life at the university is like from sunrise to midnight.
Prospective students get to see a glimpse into life at UVM. But this project is equally eye-opening for those who are more in the know.
Not only are we talking to prospective students at the university, we're also talking to our community right here. We hear back from people who work on campus that they didn't realize that the incredible diversity of things happens in a single day here. So it's also a great community building story where people learn, oh, I've seen that person on campus before, now I know a little bit more about their story. Or I always wondered what that club was all about, now I've seen kind of a moment in their life.
It takes so many different kinds of people to make a university work.
Josh Brown came up with this idea to capture a day in the life of UVM in 2011. This year, he worked the late night shift and discovered students hard at work and hard at play.
I stopped in at the Living Learning residential area and stopped in where there were a bunch of undergraduate students who had organized an indoor drone flying contest. And they were getting out their little tiny hovercraft and some larger things that had propellers and zooming them around in the darkness, trying to land them, trying to do stunts. And it was just a subculture of a subculture that I think few of us were aware of, but was really a lot of fun for this group of students who were focused on that technology. Right down the hall, another group of students was in the pottery studio, and they were not doing a class assignment, but they were deeply invested in making things on the pottery wheels, and there was this kind of serene, wonderful collegiality going on there as people were making pottery.
Brown also ventured off campus to find a one-of-a-kind piece of equipment being prepped to go where few have gone before.
I went down to the waterfront and stopped in at UVM's Rubenstein Ecosystem Sciences Laboratory, which is right on the edge of Lake Champlain. And not that many people know about it. Probably even fewer people know that the university has a submarine. It's a remotely operated underwater vehicle. And so I stopped into one of these little known rooms in the Ecosystem Science Lab and got to chatting with Steve Cluett, who is the captain of the UVM research boat, and he was in there working on this submarine, getting the hydraulics and the electronics to be ready for a research trip that was going to go out later that day. And I just enjoyed talking with Steve, getting a sense for his technical expertise, and reminded again of how many people it takes behind the scenes to create the new knowledge, to do the teaching, to make the public educational outcomes that we're more aware of possible.
A day in the life of UVM is a snapshot of a diverse place and a dedicated community. A peek behind the scenes at what it means to be the University of Vermont. At UVM, I'm Keith Silva with Across the Fence.
Well, thank you, Keith, and our thanks also to University Communications for sharing those snapshot moments with Across the Fence. Each year, the university hosts hundreds of events, and many of them involve Vermont elementary and high school students. Our next segment focuses on an event known as the First Tech Challenge. First Tech involves teams of students who are responsible for designing, building, and programming their own robots to compete against other teams. The overall goal is to inspire interest in science and technology. One of the teams in this year's challenge was a 4-H club that was competing for the very first time.
We have a general interest 4-H club called the Champlain Shamrocks, and we meet in South Hero. We do science things and engineering. This is a subgroup of our 4-H club, so this is the Aluminum Avian Antics. They're the robotics subgroup.
Vermonters, let me speak to you for a minute. I hope that you feel right at home here at the University of Vermont and here in the Davis Center, because this is your university.
They wanted to learn about robotics, and so through their learning about robotics, they became interested in this competition. And this is the first time that I believe we've had a Vermont 4-H club participate. A nice thing is there's a lot of teams here, but they're all very supportive of each other. They're willing to share ideas, and if there's a problem with one team, someone from another team seems really ready to go and assist. So as much as it's a competition, it's really a friendly competition.
So the first teams that are going to be competing are 8221, 8462.
We're just like competing with our robot and trying to just see what it's about, because it's our first year and we have been building the robot all year long and working on the software and the programming, and so this is our big day that we've been looking forward to since September.
You get a challenge, and then you can buy a kit, and then you get to decide what pieces you want. Say like I want a linear slide, like I know I want linear slide pieces and rack and pinion pieces, like that.
How do you build a robot?
Well, it's simple because it's all with Allen wrenches and all the pieces screw together. So like it started out as an 8 shape, and then we added pieces on, and then we started customizing it, so like we kept shrinking it.
Then we have to make the robot and we have to figure out what we want it to do, and we also have to figure out, like, we had to learn our programming language LabVIEW. None of us had ever done it before, so we had to learn that. We also had to learn how to build the actual robot most efficiently.
So what does the robot do?
We have 2 modes, autonomous, which is pre-programmed, and teleop, which is remote control. In autonomous, we have 2 programs, one to go off the ramp and just stop, and then another one to go out, grab the small goal, score in it, and then come back. And then in teleop, or remote control, we have different buttons that are while pushing them or while we just press them to do different things, like let the trailer hitch down, bring the attachment up and down, open the door, that kind of thing.
They all wanted to learn to build, they all wanted to learn to program, they all wanted to learn to run it. So everybody got to learn. They took some online tutorials for the programming language which they use, which is LabVIEW. And we had a lot of evolution to our robot. It started very different, and it's just kind of progressed throughout the season.
We didn't even know anything, but like now, like we know how to build robots, program in LabVIEW, and like we even learned how to drive them.
Of course, the robotics fit perfectly under the the science, engineering, mathematics, which there's a push for more scientists and more people in those fields. But it's also a way for them to learn that science and engineering and math in a really fun kind of way.
They're not all considering careers in engineering per se, but since they're interested in agriculture, this has really opened their eyes up to how robotics is used in agriculture, and they've really noticed that robotics is applicable to a whole lot of fields, not just a technology field.
I can't wait for knowing that robots take a lot of work, a lot of effort. It takes a lot to get them going, but once they get going, you can do a lot with them.
The 4-H'ers won the first place award for Best Teamwork. Congratulations go to all of the team members. We close out today's program with a look at our working landscape. Keith Silva reports on a UVM extension specialist who works with farmers and landowners to reclaim pasture land.
When Sarah Nolan and her family moved from Alaska to Vermont, she had an idea of what she wanted.
I always say I want to have a farming business that does not consume every aspect of my life. So that's what we're doing. We have 2 young children, and obviously they take a lot of work. My husband works full-time, I work part-time, so we just don't have the ability to dedicate 100% of our time to it. So we're just hoping that we could grow a moderate-sized business with a variety of animals.
The Nolans moved here in 2010, hired a logger, and began the process of turning forest back into pasture.
You could tell it had been logged before some of the big trees had been taken off, but it was pasture 25 years ago, and we have a lot of other woods on this place, and we really had the desire to bring some of it back into pasture. So I remember at the time looking at the trees and not really being able to envision what it was going to look like, just that all the trees were going to be gone. And even then, as they started cutting them off, I kept going, okay, I still can't see, and then all of a sudden, all this open space. It was kind of neat to see that transformation.
It wasn't until the loggers left that the real work could begin.
It's, coming up here and digging things up by hand, bringing machinery up to get rid of some of the the new growth, because it will come back immediately. So by the next year, it's every year, every day, picking up a lot of brush just from the loggers. We had some good loggers, but there's always a little bit of a mess made. So going around, picking up all the brush, things like that, it's just very, very labor intensive.
This state wants to grow trees, and the soils really like to grow trees.
Dan Hudson is an agronomist with University of Vermont Extension. He's pleased with what the Nolans have done and how their work has progressed.
They've done a lot of things right. They got the grasses out there rapidly as they could, and that kept a lot of the soil in place. They still had some challenges. They included animals in the process of reclaiming it, and the animals are browsing a lot of the regrowth and depositing manure, and that helps to get the soil biology working for them. I think they've chosen good grasses to include, and they worked hard. They were not afraid to get out here and do a lot of manual labor.
One of the gnarliest questions a landowner faces when reclaiming pasture is what to do with the stumps.
There are pros and cons to stumping. We decided to not stump the whole thing because it's very expensive to get all the stumps removed, and then also it disturbs a lot of the topsoil that could be critical to getting that new grass established. So we opted to just stump a few areas that we felt were problem areas that we couldn't keep up with, and to leave the other stumps. Problem with leaving stumps is if you do want to mow and get rid of things like, let's say, blackberries or raspberries that seem to come in first, then it's nice to be able to mow after the animals have grazed it. Stumps make it very difficult to do that, so use an old mower.
Logging the land, increasing soil fertility, and planting grass seed are the first steps to pasture recovery. What comes next is a whole other animal, or animals.
I generally tell people, get some animals soon, but don't get too many, and get some exposure to the animals so you understand what you're dealing with. So if you can work with a neighbor that has the class of animals that you're interested in having, you can learn from them, you can manage them, you can use them to address nutrient issues on your pasture. It's a win-win for everybody if you're understanding as you go into it that it's going to be a lot of work.
It's definitely looking better.
UVM Extension has helped Nolan from the beginning. This new Vermonter says Extension's knowledge and expertise has helped her family feel right at home.
I'm not a soil expert, so I can look at a soil sample and go, okay, it's nutrient deficient, but I don't know how to correct that. So the UVM Extension has been very helpful in helping me make decisions about what kind of seed to get, what kind of fertilization, if anything. We've also done a lot of pasture walks where people come And we walk around and I say, this is what we've done. And the people who come to the pasture walk say, hey, have you thought about doing this or that? Well, maybe I would do it this way. And I've learned a lot from that too. And those have all been sponsored by UVM Extension. So we've actually used UVM Extension a lot since we've been here.
Like the saying goes, Pasture wasn't built in a day. Nolan's advice for would-be farmers: take small bites.
Start small and then grow from there. Ultimately, I just like to have a nice pasture that doesn't require as much maintenance, that we can put animals on, either our animals or somebody else's animals. In the beginning, I had these ideas of coming up here and having just this beautiful green pasture, no stumps, you know, a few trees here and there, nice big maples to kind of make it really beautiful and scenic. And now I'm just I'm just hoping to get it cleaned up. I know that this is going to take many years to look as good as I would like it to, but as long as I'm seeing progress every year, then I'm happy.
Vermont's forests and fields are what give Vermont its identity. But it's an effort from farmers and foresters working together that makes Vermont's working landscape work. In Corinth, I'm Keith Silva with Across the Fence.
Well, thank you, Keith, and thank you for joining us. That's our program for today. I'm Judy Simpson. I'll see you again next time on Across the Fence.